You won't believe what the FBI uncovered beneath Frank Fritz's old floorboards. It started as a routine search, but quickly escalated into a shocking incident when agents stumbled upon a secret hidden for years in the American picker star's home. Was it a rare antique, a dark secret, or something that left the entire investigation team stunned? Stay tuned to the end to uncover the chilling truth behind this discovery. Make sure to hit that like button, share with friends, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on this jaw-dropping discovery. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's dive right in. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this. A new medical report has revealed a shocking truth. Frank Fritz had a lethal amount of drugs in his system at the time of his death. According to prosecutors, this was no accident. It was deliberate poisoning. And the person arrested is none other than his former partner, Wolfe. The idea that Wolfe would poison someone he once trusted completely is not only unthinkable, but utterly ruthless. The case has stunned not only the American Pickers fan community, but the entire entertainment world, where the bond between TV stars was once considered unbreakable. Previously, many viewers believed the tension between Fritz and Wolfe was merely a publicity stunt to boost attention and ratings. But now, things have spiraled beyond imagination. Wolfe has been accused of murder, with motives allegedly rooted in greed and revenge. In the early days of the case, social media reports claimed the charges against Wolfe had been dropped, while investigators continued to gather evidence. Despite the compelling nature of the case, the lack of concrete evidence has prevented it from ever being fully resolved. It wasn't until a member of the American Pickers production crew revealed that he saw Wolfe at Fritz's house on the night of the incident that the case truly exploded. Iowa State Police conducted a thorough investigation and uncovered shocking evidence. Wolfe's fingerprints on pill bottles at the scene and suspicious text messages sent to Fritz. These findings led to a first-degree murder charge, fueling deep suspicions that Fritz's death was not an accident but a deliberate act. The investigation began when a forensic expert noticed discrepancies in the toxicology report. The initial cause of death was reported as complications from a stroke, but the autopsy revealed a dangerously high level of drugs in Fritz's system, far exceeding the prescribed dosage for his condition. This was particularly suspicious because Fritz was known to strictly adhere to his recovery regimen. Forensic experts determined that the drugs in Fritz's body could only have come from external interference. Authorities investigated those who had contact with Fritz in his final hours, and what they uncovered stunned even seasoned detectives. Neighborhood security cameras captured Wolfe's car arriving at Fritz's house late at night, just 3 hours before emergency services were called. It was Wolfe who made the 911 call that night, claiming he had checked on his old friend and found Fritz unresponsive. However, this very detail sparked controversy and prompted investigators to re-examine the entire history between the two men. When paramedics arrived at the scene, they found Frank Fritz unresponsive with no pulse. All efforts to revive him failed, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Initially, the cause of death was attributed to complications from a prior stroke. However, toxicology results told a different story, prompting investigators to dig deeper and uncovering a dark secret no one could have anticipated. Immediately, investigators turned their attention to Mike Wolfe, and the hidden motives behind his longtime friend's death. What particularly caught their notice was Wolfe's suspicious behavior following Fritz's passing. Instead of mourning or honoring his old friend, Wolfe quickly moved to gain control of Fritz's personal collection and intellectual property. Within less than 48 hours, he contacted Fritz's lawyer to discuss using Fritz's name and likeness for American Pickers' commercial products. The investigation led detectives to search Wolfe's home and office, where they discovered a hidden safe containing unlabeled pill bottles, later identified as matching the substance found in Fritz's system. But the most striking find was a journal in Wolfe's travel bag, filled with entries revealing his growing anger toward Fritz. Some entries dated back years, but their tone became increasingly hostile. One entry, written just weeks before Fritz's death, read, "F thinks he can waltz back in and take half the glory. He forgets that without me the show wouldn't exist. He's a burden." Throughout the 6-week trial, Wolfe remained eerily calm, sitting silently beside his attorney. Prosecutors described how he meticulously planned Fritz's murder. Evidence showed Wolfe had researched undetectable poisons and methods to make a death appear as a natural health complication. His internet search history included queries like, "Can drug interactions causing a stroke be detected after death?" and "How to make a death look like complications from a stroke." These searches were far from coincidental, suggesting a carefully orchestrated plot. The prosecution argued that Wolfe used Fritz's medical history as the perfect cover to conceal a murder driven by resentment and greed. Witnesses, including crew members, testified about the growing rift between the two. A production assistant recalled heated arguments about the show's future, with Wolfe demanding full creative control and telling Fritz he was no longer a co-host due to his health issues. The most emotional testimony at the trial came from Danielle Colby, a longtime friend of both Fritz and Wolfe. In tears, she reluctantly sided with the prosecution, recounting a memorable confrontation with Wolfe about his treatment of Fritz. "I started noticing Mike seemed obsessed with being the sole face of American Pickers," she said, choking up. "When I asked him if he'd consider reconciling with Frank, Mike got defensive and angry. He told me, 'Stay out of things that don't concern you.'" Colby revealed she had found disturbing notes in Wolfe's office about Fritz's medication schedule. When she confronted him, Wolfe coldly responded that he was concerned for Frank's health. However, given the long-standing tension between the two, these notes only fueled suspicion. The defense tried to portray Wolfe and Fritz's relationship as a misunderstood friendship, arguing that Wolfe had attempted to mend things before Fritz's death. They called network executives who claimed Wolfe publicly supported Fritz's recovery. However, this argument was swiftly undermined by Fritz's personal physician, who confirmed that Fritz was planning to open a new antique shop and had never taken the dangerous drug dosage Wolfe was alleged to have administered. When directly asked if he had given Fritz the drugs, Wolfe, who had remained composed throughout the trial, suddenly lost control. He shouted at the prosecutor, "You don't understand! You don't know what it's like to build something from nothing, only to see someone else take credit and smile for the cameras like they mattered to the show's success as much as I did." The outburst forced a brief recess, but the damage was done. A juror later said it was the defining moment, revealing the deep-seated resentment Wolfe had harbored for years after Fritz's departure from the show. A financial motive soon came to light. Forensic accountants testified that Wolfe had quietly restructured their company, transferring intellectual property rights to himself in the event of Fritz's incapacitation or death. Wolfe had also taken out a $5 million business insurance policy, with his company as the beneficiary. Prosecutors further revealed that Wolfe had set up multiple shell companies, funneling over $2 million worth of antiques without Fritz's consent. The jury took only 4 hours to deliver a guilty verdict. As the judge sentenced Wolfe to life in prison without parole, the courtroom erupted into chaos. Wolfe, who had remained composed throughout the 6-week trial, suddenly stood and shouted, "Don't you get it? He was going to ruin everything! He was going to destroy the legacy I built!" He lunged over the defense table, throwing papers and a water glass, then charged toward Fritz's family, flailing angrily before court security subdued him. The courtroom descended into pandemonium as shouts filled the air, with people scrambling in panic as Wolfe briefly broke free and lunged forward again. The most shocking moment came when Wolfe glared at Danielle Colby, who sat silently in the gallery, and yelled, "Tell them the truth about who Frank really was!" Colby turned away, visibly pained, as several crew members began to cry. The American Pickers family was utterly fractured, deeply divided by the trial. Some still sided with Wolfe, while others bravely testified against him. Court documents revealed that Wolfe had secretly manipulated the production team behind the scenes, turning them against Fritz. Years of conflict and tension boiled over, and as security struggled to regain control, Wolfe continued shouting, revealing even more shocking details. He had planned to start his own show, claiming Fritz was useless and that the network wanted him back. Reporters in the courtroom described the scene as surreal and chaotic, with at least 3 people injured, including Wolfe's defense attorney, who was hit by a thrown water bottle during the melee. Even as he was dragged from the courtroom, Wolfe kept screaming about betrayal and the legacy he claimed had been stolen from him. The courtroom outburst dealt a fatal blow to Wolfe's hopes for an appeal. The image his defense team had crafted of a calm, misunderstood businessman was shattered. In the aftermath, a wave of Wolfe's former colleagues came forward, revealing previously unknown aspects of his true nature. Thomas Reynolds, a former American Pickers producer, recalled Wolfe's intense outbursts behind the scenes whenever things didn't go his way. "He was always charming on camera," Reynolds shared. "But off camera, Wolfe could be terrifying, especially to younger staff." Others corroborated that Wolfe had grown increasingly paranoid, believing Fritz was planning a TV comeback with a rival show. The case not only shocked those involved, but sent ripples through the reality TV community. American Pickers, a global TV phenomenon with millions of viewers, now faces an uncertain future. The History Channel removed all episodes featuring Mike Wolfe and issued a statement expressing shock and condolences to Frank Fritz's family. Several major sponsors have also pulled out, leaving the show's fate more precarious than ever. Fritz's family filed a lawsuit to gain control of Frank's antique collection and intellectual property, vowing to protect his legacy. They accused the network of enabling Wolfe's increasingly erratic behavior over the years. Psychologists suggest that Mike Wolfe may have suffered from narcissistic personality disorder, a condition that can present as charming and friendly on the surface, but harbors deep resentment underneath. This isn't just a fight over assets, but deep family secrets, unresolved conflicts, and life-changing decisions. What do you think about this struggle? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and let us know what stories you'd like to hear next. Be sure to like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned for more exciting content. We won't disappoint you. Dr. Robert Keller, a forensic psychologist who closely followed the trial, stated that Fritz's departure from the show likely caused a severe narcissistic injury to Wolfe. However, what alarmed prosecutors most was how Wolfe used his celebrity status to manipulate public perception. Shortly after Frank Fritz's death, Wolfe appeared on social media in tears, claiming his best friend had died from stroke complications, while seizing the opportunity to promote a memorial product bearing Frank's name. Prosecutor Sarah Donovan asserted, "This wasn't just a murder. It was a deliberate deception aimed at millions of viewers mourning a man, unaware that the person shedding tears was the one who killed him and profited from their grief." Subsequent investigations revealed that over $1 million was raised in the weeks following Fritz's death, with most of the funds funneled into accounts accessible only to Wolfe. As Mike Wolfe begins his life behind bars, fans and viewers worldwide remain in shock. Robert Jenkins, a loyal fan of the show, shared, "We invited him into our homes every week. We believed in the honesty, passion, and desire to preserve history he portrayed. To learn it was all a facade is heartbreaking." Many TV personalities who worked with Wolfe have publicly distanced themselves from him. Some expressed profound shock and urged the public to honor the memory of Frank Fritz, whom they consider the true victim. For the American Pickers crew, the tragedy is far from over. Trial testimony revealed a deeply divided production team, with some still believing in Wolfe's innocence while others are convinced of his guilt. A show that once symbolized a passion for history and human connection now lies in tatters, a television empire undone by its own leader. Danielle Colby, who testified in court as a witness for the prosecution, has since taken a leave of absence from television. She expressed a need for time to heal and reflect, and has asked for privacy. She also expressed hope that the legacy of antique preservation, the thing that brought everyone together, will continue despite the tragedy. Meanwhile, the remaining members of the film crew have largely disappeared from the public eye, struggling with the double shock of losing their close friend Frank Fritz and witnessing their longtime friend Mike Wolfe being convicted of murder. The judge's final words before Mike Wolfe erupted in a courtroom rage now seem almost prophetic. "Mr. Wolfe, you presented yourself as a guardian of history and a preserver of American culture, but beneath that facade lay a desire for vengeance and destruction. You used your platform to preach the values of the past while secretly plotting to murder the very man with whom you built that legacy." Moments after the sentence was handed down, Wolfe lunged across the defense table, sparking chaos in the courtroom. It was the last time the public saw him before he was taken away to begin the rest of his life behind bars. However, the story didn't end there. It unfolded into a gripping new chapter that began at a small, secluded cemetery in Iowa, where Frank Fritz had been laid to rest. What was once a quiet, peaceful resting place suddenly became the epicenter of an unprecedented media frenzy. News vans lined the dusty road leading to the cemetery, while antique collectors, history enthusiasts, and curious onlookers gathered behind a hastily erected fence. At the center of it all, a team of specialists began preparations to exhume the grave of Frank Fritz, the beloved co-host of American Pickers, who had died just a year prior. The relocation of the grave was initially thought to be a straightforward process, prompted by the sale of the land to a developer planning to expand a nearby history museum, ironically one of Frank's favorite stops during his treasure hunting days. The Fritz family, though reluctant, agreed to the move on the condition that it be done quietly and respectfully. However, when news of the exhumation leaked to local media, public interest surged, forcing local authorities to step in. Eventually, they permitted limited media coverage of the relocation on the condition that all proceeds from the footage be donated to the Crohn's Disease Research Foundation, a cause close to Frank's heart as he had battled the illness for much of his life. The Fritz family agreed. Frank's sister, Lisa, explained, "Frank never liked making a big deal out of things, but he always wanted to help others in any way he could. I believe he'd be okay with this decision." On the day of the relocation, the sky was clear and cool. Cemetery staff had quietly prepared the site the day before, clearing paths for equipment and erecting barriers around the area to ensure the team of specialists could carry out their work without interruption. It marked the beginning of another somber chapter in the American Pickers story. But this time, there was no laughter, no forgotten treasure waiting to be uncovered, only grief, an unfinished legacy, and a memory being unearthed under the watchful eyes of the world. A seasoned conservator with years of experience handling historical artifacts was brought in to oversee the entire relocation process, ensuring that every step was carried out with the utmost respect for the deceased. "We're following protocols similar to those used when working with historical sites while also honoring the family's wishes," she said. But what Dr. Chambers did not disclose at the time was the startling detail about Frank Fritz's burial, an extraordinary secret only recently revealed. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the granite slab covering the grave was gently lifted by a crane, revealing not a traditional coffin, but a custom-designed artifact chamber beneath. According to Mike Wolfe, who had worked alongside Frank on American Pickers, this was exactly what Frank had wanted. "He used to joke all the time that when he died, he wanted to be surrounded by the things he loved," Mike recalled. "Most people thought he was kidding, but after his stroke in 2022, Frank started taking everything more seriously. He made it clear in his will that he wanted to be preserved alongside the treasures he cherished throughout his life." When the vault was finally opened, the cemetery fell into a stunned silence, followed by a collective gasp. Inside, surrounding Frank's coffin, were carefully arranged compartments filled with his most prized personal collectibles, many of which had never been seen by the public before. This wasn't just a collection, it was a living legacy, a profound reflection of Frank's deep love for American history. Dr. Chambers, a veteran in the field with decades of experience, couldn't hide her emotion. "In my 20-year career, I've never seen anything like this," she said, her voice trembling. "This isn't just a collection. This is history in its most personal and authentic form." Among the many remarkable pieces was a 1934 original Indian motorcycle, once owned by a Midwestern man. Frank had discovered it in a dusty barn in Iowa back in 2019, but he had never shared the find publicly. Experts estimate its value at over $300,000, though its historical and emotional significance is considered priceless. Every item surrounding Frank's resting place told a story, not just of what he collected, but of who he was. Next to the motorcycle was an old wooden box containing personal letters between Thomas Edison and a young female inventor, believed to have contributed ideas to several of his most famous patents. The documents were later authenticated, unveiling the potential to rewrite a part of America's technological history. The discovery left historians stunned, as it shed light on a forgotten collaboration that had remained hidden for over a century. In another corner of the chamber sat a handcrafted toy car collection, each one delicately labeled with the name of a child from the Iowa Children's Hospital. It was revealed that in his final years, Frank had quietly volunteered there, building a small workshop where he taught children how to make vintage-style toy cars as a form of therapy. Each car represented more than just a hobby. It was a memory, a moment, and a bond between Frank and the children he quietly mentored. It painted a portrait of a man who, even in private, never stopped giving. His legacy now forever etched not just in antiques, but in lives touched. But what moved the world most deeply was a small leather-bound notebook embossed with the words, "A True Discovery." Inside, there wasn't a list of high-value items featured on the show. Instead, it held stories. Stories behind the artifacts. Memories of ordinary people who had left a lasting impression on Frank. "The notebook feels like a spiritual legacy," Mike Wolfe said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's a final message Frank left for the world. He didn't just collect antiques, he collected memories. This notebook, this is the real treasure. It's Frank's way of telling us what truly mattered to him." Each page was handwritten, often in Frank's uneven scrawl, filled with warmth, humor, and humanity. It was a window into his heart, a quiet, powerful reminder that behind every item is a life, a story, a connection. And that, more than anything else, was the legacy Frank Fritz wanted to leave behind. News of the discovery spread quickly, causing a social media frenzy. Collectors' groups organized memorial events and fundraising efforts to preserve history. The History Channel announced the production of a special documentary titled Fritz's Last Collection, with Mike Wolfe narrating. The Smithsonian Institution and several major museums expressed interest in exhibiting the collection. The Smithsonian proposed a traveling exhibition, American Picker, Frank Fritz's personal collection, which would visit the towns where Frank had lived. "These items don't just belong to Frank," said project director Robert Hensley. "They belong to everyone he ever connected with." The announcement sparked a wave of support from fans, historians, and the general public, all eager to celebrate the man who had dedicated his life to preserving America's forgotten past. And now, through his own collection, was leaving behind a piece of that history for generations to come. The tapestry of memories could only truly be felt when the pieces were placed together. After much consideration, the Fritz family agreed to the exhibition, with the condition that the entire final collection would be permanently housed in a museum in Frank's hometown. Frank had spent his entire life bringing forgotten treasures back into the light, as his sister Lisa Fritz once said. Now they would continue telling the story he so deeply cherished, ensuring his legacy lived on, not just through the items he had collected, but through the lives he had touched and the history he had preserved for all to appreciate. It took experts 3 days to catalog, position, and handle each item along with Frank's personal notes. The entire process was streamed live, accompanied by insightful commentary from historians. The viewership shattered all records for historical content, with a global audience watching every moment unfold. Beyond the artifacts themselves, this experience revealed another side of Frank Fritz, a man who quietly sought out and preserved the forgotten memories of America. And in his final act, he had transformed himself into a living, breathing part of the very collection he had devoted his life to. Through his work, Frank not only curated history, but became an integral part of it, leaving behind a legacy that would continue to resonate for generations. The carefully curated exhibition not only honored the artifacts, but also celebrated the values that Frank Fritz had pursued throughout his life, connecting memories and showing respect for the humble history of America. After the collection was safely relocated, Frank's remains were transported to their new resting place with the utmost reverence. His special coffin was escorted by a procession of classic cars, driven by his close friends and fellow collectors, creating a fitting tribute to a legend. It was a farewell parade like no other, as those who had shared in his journey paid their respects, ensuring that Frank's legacy, his passion for preservation, history, and the bonds he had forged, would live on in the hearts of all who had been touched by his story. The new memorial, designed by Mike Wolfe and the Fritz family, was inspired by the architecture of America's historic streets, a heartfelt tribute to a man who had traveled across the country to preserve the nation's heritage. In the weeks that followed, local museums and historical societies across the United States saw an unprecedented surge in visitors, a phenomenon that the media dubbed the Fritz effect. People who had once been indifferent to history began to rediscover the stories of their own communities. Inspired by the legendary final collection of American pickers, Frank's leather-bound journals were carefully preserved and digitized, forming the foundation for a new historical initiative. This initiative sought to honor ordinary Americans and the quiet contributions they had made to the country's history. The Fritz effect sparked a cultural awakening, as people nationwide began to realize that history was not just in textbooks, but in their everyday lives, the stories of those who had come before them and the treasures they had left behind. Frank Fritz, in his final act, had created a legacy that transcended artifacts, igniting a deeper appreciation for the forgotten and often overlooked contributions of everyday people to the fabric of the nation. The Fritz Scholarship was also established to support researchers, particularly in rural areas that are often overlooked, to record the history of everyday objects and the people behind them. A year after his passing, Frank Fritz, a man who had dedicated his life to rescuing forgotten antiques, left behind his greatest legacy, a collection that not only preserved history, but also changed the way we view the value of seemingly insignificant things. Each item in the collection was no longer just an object. It had become a story, a memory, a piece of the American soul. Frank's work had reshaped our understanding of what matters, revealing that history is not only found in grand monuments, but in the humble treasures that tell the stories of ordinary lives. His legacy continues to inspire us to see the beauty and importance in the small, often overlooked pieces of the past, and to recognize that every item, no matter how small, has a story worth preserving. Thank you for watching the video. The discoveries from Frank Fritz's estate will surely continue to shock and inspire for many years to come. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more amazing and surprising stories in our future videos. And don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think about this extraordinary story. The story of Frank Fritz is not just a journey of preserving heritage, but also a profound lesson about the value of memories and the quiet contributions made to history. What he left behind is not just antique items, but an invaluable legacy. A reminder that even the smallest things can carry deep stories about the people and times they come from. Thanks for watching.